Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 115, and we talk about the stupendously mediocre new movie by DC called The Flash. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Well, I saw Brian last weekend in Colorado, in person, IRL, which was really cool. Got to hang out. Brian, I realized we didn't really take any pictures together because I was going to send one to Savon, but we happened to just be on opposite sides of the camera every single time that we took pictures.
I mean, you even mentioned like let's take a picture instead of Savon, and then I have no idea what happened after that. Great follow through, man. Confidently lazy.
We had just that old man follow through.
Very poor follow through. But Brian got to meet Kaya for the first time. All her screaming glory.
How was that? Was she friendly to Brian, or she wary of strangers?
She was definitely wary of strangers, right, Brian? At first, when she met you.
Yeah, maybe a little, but I think by the end, I won her over.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
she was
really, I mean, the star of the show was Anna. Yeah, no, but I think she wanted to go home with Anna, and that meant coming home with you, I think, is probably what happened there.
And that's how I operate.
They're married. It's a package deal.
Yeah, Anna was taking Kai all over this little
I reap the benefits.
Food court. Yeah.
She's Jokic, you Murray. Yeah. You still put in, just because you're not the star, I don't mean you didn't put in work.
No, it's more like she's Jokic and I'm MPJ. Like, I just eat.
Oh, okay.
I just eat off of that.
Yeah, you hitting open shots, because he making it easy for me. I like that. While y'all were vacationing and whatnot, I actually turned 30 last Saturday.
My goodness.
Right. So I'm one of y'all now. I reminisce of the old days. Kids are going to start asking me, was life in black and white? They're going to wonder, what was it like in the before times when they had whales and blue skies? So I'm glad to be able to join the OG veteran group. I can't wait to learn much from y'all. Y'all going to be my new OG vets. Oh, really, I'm a vet now. I'm not a young blood no more. So glad to join the club, fellas.
It's weird, like at a certain point, right? Like all the ages and generations just collapse into one category of OGs, of vets. Like the 10-year difference is suddenly not a difference. Welcome to the club. Looking forward to your gray beard.
I mean, I already got like some, you can't see it on camera, but I got some, they're here to stay. Long grays too. They've been here.
You're not plucking those.
Not going anywhere. Nah, it's like it's too much. It's like it's not this serious.
I had this one gray hair sticking on my head for the longest time, and I would sometimes like pull it out, but then now they're everywhere. There's no point. Like, you can't just take one out when there's like 20 others that are also there, or 40 others. I don't even know how many there are at this point. Dude, even my nose hairs. There's a few white nose hairs in there that are in there. That's quite disheartening to see.
And they stand out.
Speaking of getting old,
all times undefeated.
Yeah. Speaking of getting old and time, the progression of time, we're going to talk about this summer's big blockbuster film from DC. It's called The Flash. Their follow-up to Shazam. Just kidding. It's really a follow-up to Justice League and Batman v Superman. And Henry Cavill never shows up in this, so, it's definitely a follow-up. DC needs to get their house in order. So this is The Flash. First question. What do you guys know about The Flash? Because I'm not super caught up on Flash stuff. I know there's like the CW show I used to watch, maybe the first 3 seasons. I watched most of the episodes. So Barry Allen is the Flash in that one. He gets struck by lightning. He's obviously got super speed, and then sometimes he can do cool things with it, like he can like shoot lightning bolts occasionally if he goes fast enough, although that was a thing. And then I don't know if he must do the time travel thing in that show eventually. It's usually something that develops later on once he's got like more speed. His origin story is the death of his mom. In the show, I guess this is spoilers. In the show, yeah, his mom is killed by Eobard Thawne, who is a future he's a character who lives in the future but has speed powers somehow and is like really mad at the Flash or wants to kill the Flash or something. So he goes back and kills the mom to make him the Flash. It's very confusing. And he's Reverse Flash, so he wears a yellow suit, which is actually kind of badass. The yellow suit is pretty cool. And I don't know why he's called Reverse Flash. Like he doesn't go. Yeah, he doesn't go in reverse though. He just has the same power set. I'm not sure why he should
go in
Flash,
reverse
just because he's evil.
He should run backwards.
Yeah,
It's Reverse Flash because he ends up just having the different stories vary, but all you really need to know is that he has mega ridiculous, like pathological beef with Barry, and the Reverse Flash is like epitomizing.
Men
that
will
beef.
do anything to not go to therapy. That's what I've learned from that.
Reverse Flash should be
therapy is
really
beef.
slow, right? Isn't that actually
Right,
Reverse
that's what I was
Flash?
saying. But he's not. He's really.
He should
he's
be
just
slow
as fast as
motion.
Barry, if not faster.
I think it's Reverse Flash in terms of what he stands for more so than his actual literal abilities. But
okay, thanks for explaining that.
I wish he were long exposure.
No problem,
That's
Wes.
Camera joke.
So, anyways, that's what I know about the Flash. Savon, do you know more about the Flash? Have you seen him in other things? I know there's other versions of Flash, right? Like there's the Flash that has that silver tin can helmet that like could be a frisbee, but I don't know what else is going on.
Is that Golden Age Flash?
Yeah, there's a lot of different but there's a lot of different versions of the character. But I mean, mostly what I knew is I was a kid growing up watching that Justice League cartoon in the early 2000s. So I was always watching the Wally West version of the Flash. And naturally, we've talked before, I watch a lot of those DC animated movies. A lot of those you're getting Barry Allen Flash. And then naturally, he appears in Young Justice, right? Like Wally West as Kid Flash, and then actual Barry Allen Flash is like a supporting character who pops up.
Wait, I have a
frequently in
question.
the show.
Is Wally West related to Iris West? Because in the show, Wally
Yes.
West is her brother,
Yes.
but not the Flash. He eventually becomes Kid Flash, I
Yes.
think.
Wally West and Barry Allen never had any blood relations. It was always a protege mentor thing. It's just that, to your point, Barry was in love with his like sibling cousin. They do a different version, but like family. So
they're related. Okay, all right. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, those two are related. And then I never watched the CW Flash show. I just never really got into it. Although I do like the actor as Flash, but I think that medium and the TV stuff, I wasn't the target audience, and that's okay. And then
You mean you're not a 13-year-old?
yeah, and then naturally the biggest thing, yeah, basically. And then I watched a lot of all the DC animated stuff, and then he has his own movie specifically, the Flashpoint Paradox, which is what this movie is actually heavily based around, like the main plot of this movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But so I know a decent little bit, but I didn't watch the show, and I wasn't really big on reading Flash comics either, because I feel like those power sets get really convoluted in the comics in a way that's actually not enjoyable.
And there is some kind of story where the Flash has to like sacrifice himself. There's like a big crossover event. Is that Crosspoint? Something like that? Whatever. Crisis on Infinite Earths, though? Isn't that where he has to do something? Or is it Flashpoint?
I think it's Flashpoint is what you're probably thinking of. That's like, because that's the one this movie is based clearly most around. It's probably the most iconic Flash story, if we're going to be honest.
Well, in that one, he ends up dying. Like, that's the end of the Flash. So that one's iconic. We're going to lose our comic book. Well, I'm going to lose my comic book, Credo card or whatever it's called.
Did you ever have credibility on that front?
No, did not.
Yeah, that was a bold claim. Like, okay, we're just saying anything.
There's nothing.
All right, Brian, what did you know about the Flash?
I'm just wondering if there's like a multiverse story arc with a lot of different Flash iterations called Hot Flashes. Like that's got to be a thing, right? Someone made that? Maybe not.
Some of the Flashes are 45-year-old women.
Yeah. They're menopausal Flashes.
Speedsters in the DC universe.
There are, right? Like there's Zoom, there's Reverse Flash, there's a Dark Flash.
Saboteur. It's pretty.
Who's
obnoxious.
the Flash that wears a trench coat and nothing?
There's only so many ways you can be super.
Yikes! What?
There's such low hanging fruit that I just won't even.
Don't.
Anyway,
well, you'd be able to see it hanging low too if he was just wearing a trench coat.
Jesus.
Oh, because he's also old, right? Never mind.
How did y'all feel walking off?
I'm probably the least acquainted with the Flash. I just know classic speedster. He's probably the genesis for all other speedsters in superhero lore out there, right? Like I'm pretty sure Quicksilver comes after the Flash. A-Train from The Boys definitely comes way after both of those two characters, but Flash is the pinnacle speedster out there. And for me, that's kind of all you really need to know. Like I've seen some of Justice League, the animated series, and I've seen some of Young Justice, so I'm familiar with the character in those lenses, and some of the quirkiness that comes out of the Flash. But other than that, hasn't really been a very appealing character, to be honest. But I will say, despite all of that, the trailer for this movie had me hooked. I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to watch this. This is the one DC Universe movie that I'm actually interested and kind of excited to see. So that brings us
Agreed.
here.
Interesting. I wasn't sold on the trailer. I was like, it looks fine. All right. So then that takes us to the end. Let's kind of skip forward to the end and then we'll backtrack. How did you feel walking out of this movie? Let's start with Brian. I don't have any clue how you feel. You kind of went social media dark for a little bit here.
I was trying to keep you guys with bated breath, wondering what
We're
my
in
take on
suspense.
this is.
I'm genuinely
In
curious. So
suspenders.
congrats, you succeeded. I'm like,
I mean,
gotta say?
can you guys guess? Do
Wes
you
gonna say
want
some
to
shit.
guess what my take on this is?
I'm thinking you did not like it. It was too messy.
I'm thinking you were entertained. I'm thinking you were entertained, but recognized that it was a deeply flawed.
Oh, so we
movie.
just think he's taking the same take as we have. I got it.
I mean,
No, because you did. I liked it more than you.
I think Savon knows me well. That is exactly how I felt. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but
Come
like
on.
it wasn't the best, and it kind of on the heels
The flaws are there,
on the
bro.
heels of Across the Spider-Verse, like it kind of like stands in stark relief, coming out of these other multiverse movies that we've already gotten knee deep into. This one was entertaining, but I don't know if it offers enough just yet, and definitely not a DC Universe savior.
No. It feels to me a little bit like how I felt coming out of, well, maybe even a little bit lower than like Thor Love and Thunder. It's like sort of got some of the same problems. Just like there's too much going on. Like we didn't need the goats. Like leave the goats at home.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad bit.
Like there are parts
Even in
I
hindsight,
really
like,
enjoyed about Thor Love and Thunder. And I think the same is true about this one. But yeah, I don't know. Savon, how did you feel?
I mean, pretty much what Brian said. Like, granted, I like the Flash character. Although, even if I don't like his comics that much, I love him in shows or the cartoons I've watched. So I went in like, okay, I like the character, so they're not gonna have to win me over super hard on that. I was entertained. I thought that the movie, the parts it did well, it did exceptionally well. I think there's some really high points of this movie that makes this a standout amongst all of other DC stuff that's been out.
This is wrong.
I think so. But I think the flaws in the movie are very obvious. And I think knowing how long the production of this movie took, I kind of understand why it's the case. So it's like when you get like it's like when you turn in the paper and you get like a B on the paper, and it's one of those, hey, these parts of the paper, you got like A+ quality on it. But these parts you did like D+ or C-, and it balanced out to like a B, to where like, yeah, it's a B, but you got to contextualize the B, because depending on what people care about, that's going to curve a little bit.
And this was like coming from a C
I was
student.
starkly aware of what didn't work. And it's coming from a C student. So like you recognize like, hey man, it's not like you were expecting them to crack it out the park, but you see the potential of, oh, you still did this really well, and you want to give credit where credit's due.
I don't know if I do. All right.
But ultimately, I'm here to be entertained. I spent $11. It was $11 well spent. Like, that's how I always end up doing this.
I spent 60 credits on my movie pass, so I'm satisfied.
You'll never get those back. Really?
That boy Brian.
I don't know. I walked out feeling pretty about it. I saw it wasn't a super full theater. Maybe that was part of it. But it was like 50 to 70% full. I don't know. It was just All right.
Do you need some other people to hype it up
Maybe.
for you? What the hell is this?
All right. Let's get into it. So this movie, according to Savon, Savon says it has high peaks and high valleys, or low valleys. I don't think it had any high peaks, but what what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I'll say what I liked about it first, and then you guys can go. I thought Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck were really like good as mentors for Barry, or for Ezra Miller's Barry. Um, they just seem like it's a different take on Batman in that they're both like wiser, they're both experienced, they both have like the wisdom of years, and so we're not getting the like early Batman, the Christian Bale Batmans and stuff like that. And I thought that worked. Like that's what they needed. He's maybe not like at the peak of his physical powers, but he's starting to have a lot more emotional maturity at this point. He's not quite a psychopath anymore. All of that good stuff. And then a few of the fight sequences are really cool. One of the Michael Keaton Batman action sequences, which I'm 1,000% positive it wasn't actually him doing it, was pretty cool. It was just like really clear like fighting style and movements, and like very devastating blows that he was able to do, and using his grappling gun well, and all this stuff. So they used his kit pretty cool. They used the smoke bombs and stuff that were kind of from the original Batman. So I liked all that. I thought that was good. That's where I'm ending at my highs, my good stuff from the movie. Brian,
wow,
what did you like about
the
the movie?
Short list.
He literally just liked Batman.
Yeah.
The Michael Keaton Batman from his childhood. Yep. That is literally the only thing he liked about the movie.
In defense of Michael Keaton, that guy is great. You like
I'm not hating on Michael Keaton. I got stuff to say.
I mean, I agree that he's definitely a high point. You can just tell that there is such a huge distinction between the movie stars of yesteryear and our contemporary movie stars when they're paired side by side, and you're like, wow, that guy's a vet. And anything that he delivers, even if it's just a smirk in the mirror while he's suturing up his own bullet-ridden arm, is so magnetic. And you kind of are just like, man, I love Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne. He's phenomenal. So I think he carries the torch nicely, and they gave him some nice set pieces. I mean, like he pulls out the ruler so that he can calculate the level of magnitude for the bomb that he's setting off. Stuff like that is kind of fun. And then I think, but really the highlight for me of the Flash movie, and kind of the revelation here, is that Barry Allen himself is really fantastic and carries this movie as this kind of like obsessive, nerdy, anxious, self-absorbed kind of character, and how the Flash's abilities play into that. I thought all of that was like very interesting. And then when you put Barry Allen with younger Barry Allen, who has had a different upbringing, it's a really fun gag. It becomes this buddy comedy, and I think they just kept delivering with that in delightful ways. 18-year-old Barry Allen, vibrating his molecules to fall naked into his neighbor's place in the floor below him. That's pretty funny. Or like when older Barry Allen loses his Flash abilities, but is trying to conjure them up in the lobby of the office building, and does his Flash running thing in slow motion.
That goofy run. Oh my god,
it's such a goofy run, and
self-aware.
And I feel like they made his character do that just so that they could do that bit where he loses the abilities, and it's so much more hilarious for it. And so I think all of that is played up really well throughout the entire movie. And I think Ezra Miller kind of, despite all his flaws, owns this character. And that was interesting to see.
I was gonna make a joke about being older and being harder to conjure your powers, but I'm not gonna. Keep going.
Well, there are pills for that.
Despite that being you making the right. Anyways, my highs, yeah. So like my highs were very similar to Brian. You know what I liked about this movie? It reminded me.
You did not like anything, Savon. It wasn't a good movie.
It reminded me of
just ignore that.
On the pros and cons side, those like mid 2000 superhero movies before the MCU kind of started doing the heavy continuity stuff, in that this movie wants to be a superhero movie, and it doesn't take itself too seriously in a way that allows for things that normally wouldn't work and maybe even other superhero movies to work in this one. Like, to your point about all the Batman gadgets, Wesley, they were all so clearly like silly and comic inspired. Like, even the modern Ben Affleck Batman, like, oh, you just got a battering ram just ready to eject on your bike, and like it's like, oh, you got a perfect gadget for every situation. You have a dual sideways shooting harpoon thing just for like, you have a spike strip grenade you can shoot out that, like, it's all, and when you think about it, goofy as hell, but the movie's tone makes it work, and it made it really fun. Because again, I'm not even like a huge Batman fan, but having just both versions of Batman whip out this full arsenal of ridiculous gadgets, the little arm fire thing he used to cut open the manhole cover, the grating, the smoke grenades, the super like just bulletproof fabric cape. I'm like, this is silly, but it works, and I really really enjoyed that piece of the movie because it made the fight scenes that much more fun. But Brian, to your point, the movie also still grounded itself in a way that super speed ideally should be it is a busted power that should technically really trivialize any problems that you have. And I like that the movie made it to where having super speed does not just trivialize every problem. You need to understand the science of what running fast means, right? Like, hey, there's friction. You need clothes that work. You build up electricity. You can lose control. You're going to be hungry.
Yeah.
There's all this other little stuff that they make kind of play into the movie that, makes Flash's power set kind of fun, because most other speedsters in media, it's pretty boring. They move really fast. There's not really any real downside to their power. But this one is very clear pros, cons. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be a liability. Not being able, even the rule of being able to move things but not people, and then them having to use that creatively. I thought it made for some fun moments in the movie that made a character, again, it's a really busted power. They made it work on screen in fun, creative ways. That combined with Batman, Barry, the OG Barry being intelligent and knowledgeable but powerless, the other one being powerful but idiotic, it made for a good little triage. And, that was entertaining. Wes, pretty much everything you say about Michael Keaton Batman, I'll say this as someone who didn't even really watch that Batman movie. So seeing him in this is kind of like a fresh take I've never really seen before. It was really good. I liked it. I was sold on the whole grizzled veteran. Yeah, Michael Keaton's just a really good actor. I don't know exactly what to put my finger on, but the man's just good at his job.
It's a little bit different than the original Batman, though. I don't know how to put my finger on it. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but
because he's older.
It's not the same. Yeah, I think they
he's
really
wearing
yeah, it's a Batman who's had a lot going on. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So I'm glad that it wasn't exactly the same Batman for that reason. Like, there's been off-screen character development growth for this particular Batman in the decades that have passed. Also, I guess that means that was, like 34 years ago that movie came out. That's ridiculous. All right.
Yeah, which he held up really well. Wait, the last thing I'll add is and also I want to echo what Brian said.
Brian is right.
Ezra Miller did a good job playing both versions of Barry. Like the two Barry on screen thing really worked for me throughout the movie. There was never a moment where I felt like, oh, this is cheesy or my suspension of disbelief was not broken at all the entire movie with those two on screen acting side by side. And, props what props is due. I don't know if that's a CGI thing or acting thing or both, but like that, not once did that even remotely take me out of the movie. And that's something that if you do poorly can absolutely ruin a movie from top to bottom because they're so heavily intertwined. They're
relying
key part of the movie.
It felt like two different characters. Yeah,
genuinely, I enjoyed that.
All right, what maybe was lacking? What were the low valleys that Marvin Gaye would sing about here?
So I would agree with Savon that this definitely felt in a way kind of like a throwback, right? That there's just comic book silliness going on here, and I think when I was watching the movie, I was thinking very much of Justice League animated series. Like, to me, this movie felt like a two-parter of one of the animated shows where, like, oh, it's time for the Flash to get a Flash-centered story, and here we go into some kookiness, and I think that carries out in a number of ways, like the ones that Savon iterated, but also the explanation for what is going on with the multiverse and time travel and stuff like that in the DCU that Michael Keaton delivers via cooked spaghetti. Well, first uncooked spaghetti, then cooked spaghetti. And like it's sort of like a direct nod to the MCU, and he's like, you might have heard.
If you saw this movie when you were a kid, like, wow.
It's like shots fired.
Wow, gut punch.
And then
Pew,
you're
pew.
like, okay, maybe I can buy that. But then he drops the plate of cooked spaghetti and said, like, here's what the universe is, and some of these things are just going to intersect, and it's all wild, wild west out there. That to me was just the epitome of how much this movie did not make sense. They're just and I guess they're kind of leading into it. They're like, well, let's give you the silliest of explanations, and let's just continue to have fun in our sandbox. And I think, like, you know, that extended to a bunch of other things that happened in the movie too. It's like, all right, you know, Barry got hit out of the speed force thing where he was time traveling by a villain, and then he completely forgets about the villain. Or you know, at another early in the movie, this was a gag, and I'm gonna consider this gag also part of this because it was so cartoonish with the babies falling out of the hospital.
Oh
Which
my
could
God.
be kind of fun, but also it just seemed like they couldn't figure out the right tone, right? It was like babies falling out of a building, and then he puts a baby in a microwave, and then so it's like supposed to be some kind of sick joke, but ultimately it just left me feeling like they don't have everything fully figured out. They haven't quite figured out like what exactly is the tone of all of this. Like
Someone just
where's
said,
the
wouldn't it
line?
be funny if one of the babies was in a microwave?
It's like,
And then they
yeah,
went with it.
somebody.
And they try to hand wave it if you can't move people instead of things, and I get that
Oh,
little
boy.
rule, but like, I was texting Wes after the movie about that. I was like, and I saw that movie, like, oh, I gotta text these dudes about this shit. Like, Wes,
As
Brian, you hit the
as
nail
someone-
on the head. I was so tonally confused. I was like, how am I supposed
Yeah.
to?
Is
Am I
this
supposed to be
supposed to be
taking this
funny?
seriously because they got the scalpels flying at the
Right.
baby, or should I be like, oh my God, or laughing? But then he sees all this shit happening and then darts for the vending
Oh my
machine.
God.
I was just like, yo, y'all are pulling me emotionally. Like, if you, I'm not saying that you can't get away with that.
You
kind
totally
of humor,
could, right?
but you kind of have to. Yeah. But the tone, the movie was tonally. That scene in particular, the tone was all over the place because it's serious because the babies are in danger. It's funny because they're in such cartoon Looney Tunes level hydrochloric acid is flying at the baby in slow motion. The scalpels are flying perfectly. I'm like, what is happening right now?
And he's going for the burrito in the microwave. Like, so those are the things that, you know, they could work in a different movie, right? Like if the movie just had tons of gags like that and they really pushed it, like maybe the microwave should have gone off if the baby was inside, right? And like just like made it madcap kind of movie. That could work. But in this
Like, cook the
particular
baby?
one, I mean that's the thing. It's
a
like
Deadpool type
yeah,
thing.
it could be a Deadpool type shtick, but like
that was a Deadpool
why are
level
we
gag in a
towing that
PG-13
line?
movie, and I'm
Yeah.
just like,
I didn't. Well, I don't know. I didn't mind that they put the baby in the microwave because it felt like, you know, he's just trying to help cushion the baby from the fall or whatever. I don't
Oh
know.
my
And
God.
it prevented it from getting
Said the
caught on
dad.
fire. There was a fire stream of some sort, and so the microwave protects the baby from the fire stream.
yeah, but the movie wasn't forced into that situation. They could have made that look any way that they was. Not like we put them in a scenario. Hey, figure out how to make this work. They created the scenario and said, "Hey, yo,
Yeah.
we're just going."
They decided on the microwave baby, and then retroactively made a reason for why he needed to be in the microwave.
There's no way that they say, I don't know. Either way, what the hell are they smoking in that writer's room? Brian, though, one thing I want to say about the spaghetti explanation thing, and I want to give props fairness where fairness is due. This is actually a pretty good explanation. Like I was saying before, this whole storyline in the movie is based off the Flashpoint Paradox comic line / that animated movie where the whole premise is Flash goes back in time to save his mom and F's up everything. Like that's like the iconic Flash story, and it's a really popular one, right? And even in that movie, the entire idea is that he thinks Reverse Flash is the one who caused this problem, Wes. and it's actually, they even say in the movie and in the comic, when you go back in time, and it's distinctly different from MCU because this is even pre-MCU multiverse stuff, right? Like when this comic came out, the idea is that when you go back in time, just to messing with time in general in any direction, like they established that the effect doesn't go linearly; it goes just in all directions, just f's up everything. Sometimes they describe it as waves or shock waves or whatever you want to call it, but I'll give them props that, at least for the writers of the movie, all the flaws that they have writing aside, they adapted how it works in the comics pretty like on the money. You F with time, you don't F with just the one thing, you F with everything. It works in really unforeseen, unforeseeable ways, which also gives them a good setup for how they ended the movie, because then they have pretty much the grounds to say any change we have can be justified by moving the little can of
Very
soup.
convenient.
But they've done that in the comics too, so yeah. But again, like that's not it's convenient, but not convenience for the sake of it's convenient for the writers of the movie, but they didn't make that up themselves. That was already the established rule. So,
This is
for whatever
this is
that's
maybe
worth.
a weak point of my own knowledge, but I think it's also a weak point of the movie is they reference Back to the Future both in terms of how its time travel works and just as like something that the characters like enjoy. Brian, as our resident Back to the Future expert fan, is there parallels between the way that Back to the Future handled time travel and the way that this movie handles time travel? Like they didn't really explain why Back to the Future was important here, or where the relevance was. So I'm just trying to see if like I missed something because I didn't remember how time travel works in Back to the Future.
I mean, Back to the Future is just kind of the standard bearer of how we understand time travel in Hollywood, right? Like Back to the
Okay.
Future, I think is point zero for everything that comes afterwards that deals with time travel. And like and taking this core idea of like, okay, we're going to go change this slight thing. And then unfortunately, it has just a ton of consequences that maybe people didn't fully expect. And so that that core conceit of time travel movies is just alive in this one. And so I think they nod their hat to it. And doesn't Endgame also reference Back to the Future?
Yeah, but they basically
It
say you don't need
does.
to know about Back to the Future type of time travel.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply here.
Yeah, exactly. So
But I thought maybe they kept
basically-
referencing it because it mattered to our understanding of this movie. But then they didn't talk about like how it mattered.
I
and
think
was
they're
like,
trying
okay,
to
I don't know.
say, similar to Endgame, they're just trying to say like, that version of time travel, because everybody has seen Back to the Future. This is not that. That's what they did in Endgame, and I
alright.
think that's what they're trying to do here.
They just made a bigger deal of it than that,
I'll
though.
be-
Then that didn't make sense.
So I think y'all misread
okay,
some
tell
of
us,
that scene
tell
a
us.
little bit.
What are we misreading here?
Which I think what I read out that scene was that they were talking about Back to the Future because Barry's talking about the time traveling thing, and that's how that comes up. But I thought my understanding was the Back to the Future conversation bit was Back to the Future comes up because they're talking about time travel, but the real point is that Michael J. Fox, who's the actual guy who plays Marty
For sure.
McFly, but that's really the movie. So don't get too focused too much on Back to the Future in terms of his time traveling rules. The important part more so is that Back to the Future is just the like it could have been any movie. It could have been Star Wars. It could have been any movie.
Right, but it wasn't
point
any
was that
movie. It was
actors
Back
are
to the
swapped.
Future, and
Yeah,
it felt like that should have
yeah,
been
it was
more
Back to the
important if that's the movie you're gonna choose.
No, that's
I
not.
think they're just saying
No,
this
that's
is
not
not
the
Back to the
important-
Future, which is why they're calling out like Michael J. Fox isn't in
They're
it.
saying it's they're
That's
saying
dumb.
they're saying it's not Back to the Future, but they're also that's the movie's way of saying it comes up because they're literally in the room talking about time travel. So if you're talking about time travel, naturally the time traveling movie is gonna come up. But the point more so is that things are different. To Brian's point, that the actors got switched, so that means that just because you change something unrelated things can change too. I think that's really the movie's main point. Things completely unrelated to what you changed have also changed because of this, and now you have to recognize that's a plot.
That's a
point
missed
now.
opportunity.
Nothing is.
All right. So
what are we griping about?
Now I'm just like hating this movie. Like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, this movie was put together.
Brian, do you see what I mean?
like,
Of all the
worst
things he
way.
zeroed in on, that's the
It's such
thing.
a tiny thing, man. But
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's like,
You're
no, that's
worried
fine.
about the blade
I
of
think-
grass that gets stepped on
Yeah.
and changes everything.
No, here's what I'm worried about. This movie.
In a burning field. That's
Here's what I'm worried about. This movie was all talk, no show. And they didn't help us understand like all the relationships for like where the relationships were and like why they were so important or not important or how they were being built. Like we didn't get to see those relationships develop, and in turn we didn't get to see characters develop, and I think all of it just felt so bogus. So for instance, like Barry is fighting Zod, but like not really. And like why? There wasn't a reason for Zod to be in this movie because Barry doesn't actually face him.
No, but they needed
It's called The
Zod
Flash.
so that they could have Supergirl, right? Duh.
Right.
How else are
And
they going to
then
get Supergirl in
comes
the
into the
movie?
picture, and Supergirl has no actual development or character growth other than she maybe understands that humans aren't wholly horrible, but they're still kind of horrible, and then dies. You know, and so like
I think you missed the point of
no.
that. I think you missed the point of that entire like
her
little sub part
point
of the
in the
plot.
movie is to give young Barry Allen a boner, a crush, someone to pine after, and that's it. That's her. That's her.
No,
that's
I
her
think
point in the movie, and that's like a terrible reason to have a character in a movie who should be cool. Like her flying was cool, her fighting was
Wes,
cool.
when did that happen?
What?
There was like one Brian, am I tripping?
No,
right
he
now?
takes the picture of her, like the video, and he's like, "Oh, our kids are gonna
we
want
know
to see
who's
this one
tripping here.
day."
Because it's Supergirl
then-
flying in a because it's a dude in a plane, a bat
and then
plane
that,
watching a super
that
person
motivates
fly. I would
that
record
motivates
that.
his whole thing at the end where he's trying to save her because now he's got this big crush on her, and so he wants to now save her. Like that was the point of her being in the movie, was it motivated this like effort,
No,
and then he becomes
Wes.
like the bad
No,
guy.
bruh.
Yeah, no, that's
No,
you don't think
bruh.
that's why he went
The
back and
whole
tried to
point-
save her?
No, the whole point is that Zod was gonna destroy the planet and kill everybody, and his mama lived on that planet too. It was him. The whole point. You're getting too zeroed in on the Supergirl part. The real thing you need to take away is that the younger Flash goes on that absurd path because he realizes, Barry realizes, your Earth is actually just doomed. Period. There is nothing you can do to save it. Zod is gonna terraform the planet, win, and kill the Earth. And even though our Barry accepts that, understandably, younger Barry doesn't, because this is the world that he lives in, that everyone he knows and loves is on. So for him, it's hard to accept that.
No, he's
so,
trying to save her.
It's not
Every time he's trying
I'm
to
saving
save her.
Supergirl
because Zod
there was
needs
no
her blood.
romantic tension between them. He needs her blood so that he uses that so that he can destroy the planet. But the biggest thing, and even our Barry says originally, why are you helping this reality? Because this is the one where my mom lives, and I don't want her to die, because he recognizes that if Zod wins, Earth dies, everybody they know. That includes the younger Barry, who has like an actual relationship with the mother on this reality. For him, you're getting too caught up on the Supergirl part when there wasn't really any real tension or stuff between them. There was like one joke of like, hey, have you changed? Other than that, his whole thing was, let me save my world and everyone I care about. And, which is actually a pretty good motivation for why he does what he does, because he has the power to go back in time. And if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, everyone dies.
I think you guys are misreading that one.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but like,
I don't think that wasn't part of the calculation, but I think you guys are misreading that. I think they tried to sell it as...
You think this man went to save Supergirl over his mama when there was almost minimum interaction between those two?
Why would he didn't
Why
need
would
to save
he
his
not
mom
try
in
to
that
save
point?
the world? Is that what you're asking, Wes?
That's part of the thing. It's like
Brian, am I tripping right now?
No, but they made it clear. I thought they made it clear that he had this like crush and like was falling in love with her, and that's why he wanted to save her so badly.
I think
and that's why he keeps repeating time, even though he can see that it's not working. It doesn't matter. He's so fixated on this idea that he needs to save her, right?
I had because she's the key to Zod's plan. Without her blood, the plan doesn't work, period. Zod makes it very clear.
And he can have...
and also it's clear that he can't beat Zod on his own.
He can have multiple motivations as well, Wes. Just because he's got a crush on Supergirl doesn't negate the fact that he wants to save the planet. And also, let's not forget Supergirl's role in getting OG Barry electrocuted. What was that Frankenstein scene all about? Like... And then Supergirl's got to take him up into the clouds and get him hit by lightning. Wow.
That is literally what happens in the comic.
Exactly.
It happens in the comic. Like, in the Flashpoint thing, Flash goes back in time. There's a point where it's not two Flashes, but he loses his powers, basically. He meets an older version of Batman, but it's different because it's like a if Batman's dad, Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne died, it changed some stuff. But like older, gritty, uses guns Batman, and they even straight ripped from the comic line, straight up is the chemicals recreating the accident, it not quite working, and then having like a Hail Mary extra lightning strike to save him and bring him back. In the movies, it was like Bruce just basically really going in on like trying to use the lightning rod tech. In the movie, they decided, okay, we'll have Supergirl drag him into the clouds to do it. But like that, again, that was actually pretty accurate to how the stuff plays out, for better or for worse.
It was dumb.
But Wes, I gotta hammer this in. I saw next to, outside of the one moment where he's like, hey, did you change it to your little super suit thing? I saw nothing that implied any kind of romantic interest or thing with them at all. In fact, his whole thing was that he was trying to go on a date with the girl Iris. But also that wouldn't work because his world was gonna die.
I don't know.
I think we misread. I think you read. I don't know, Wes. I'm gonna keep it a beanbug with you, bro. I think you saw some. I think you were seeing
What
ghosts
is a
on that one.
beanbug?
There's this like
100.
Did you feel like the relationship between Barry and his mom was enough, like, to understand their like you understand their dynamic, but like, did you feel invested in that relationship? Because I didn't feel any
No.
more invested in the Barry and mom relationship than any other particular relationship. Like, it just felt like this movie was bad at establishing who cares about each other and why. And I think one of the examples is that, like, and this is one of the ones you like, an example I'm nitpicking, but I think it stands in for like what
I'm sure.
what was like my biggest like head scratching moments of like the movie was Barry gets mad at the younger Barry for using the stuffed bear or stuffed monkey as a dartboard. But that comes out of left field, right? Like they didn't establish like how the monkey was given. They didn't show him like cherishing this monkey for, you know, as like his last remnants of his mom, or like carrying it everywhere to school, or like it being old and tired from like all his days of carrying it in his lunch pail, or, you know, like there's no establishment that like this particular monkey means such a deep thing to him, and that it's like the symbol for him on his mom, right? And then he just freaks the fuck out when he sees it on the board and starts yelling at the other Barry, which like actually that scene is like very good in terms of like his performance of it. It's not grounded in something that came before. And then we just hear all this explanation about like, well, that's the one mom gave us, and, you know, blah 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 blah, and it's like, you know, it was all tell no show, and like all that stuff you could have just shown us ahead of time, and then cut out all the shit you didn't need. Like, you didn't need Supergirl in this movie. You didn't need either Zod or, I don't know, the glass shard Flash guy, the one that looked like barnacles were all over his face. You didn't really need both of them in there, and Barry doesn't really fight either one of them. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of info dumps.
You saw what I put in the chat, huh?
A lot of info dumps. No like actual investment in any of these things.
Well, I think it was less about the info dumps and just more matter of like how they try to build out the, you know, the dynamics between people. You know, watching this movie, I kept thinking about,
there's too many people.
I kept thinking about Across the Spider-Verse. I kept thinking about No Way Home, right? And definitely in Across the Spider-Verse, I'd be hard pressed to say that anyone did not care about Miles and his parents, right? Like that is such a core dynamic that they've built up over 2 movies, actually. And then even the dynamic between Gwen and her dad, right? Like you feel very much invested in those. And then same thing in No Way Home, you know, Aunt May, Peter Parker relationship is very fleshed out, but they've had the privilege of several movies to do that. And I think, you know, here in The Flash, we're getting a lot, right? They're trying to cram in a backstory, a grisly murder of his mom. They're trying to, you know, give us the dynamics between his mentor-mentee relationships, all that thing going on, and then a relationship between him and himself. And they spend most of the time between him and himself, right? Older Barry, younger Barry, and that, you know, that's where we're spending the brunt of our relationship development, which I think is actually pretty good in this movie, but it means that everything else gets the short stick. and we're not fully invested in these characters. Instead, what we get are things meant to imply that there's a relationship, right? We're meant to understand that they're close together without bringing the audience into those dynamics and making the audience also feel like we love the mom, we love their dynamic, we love the dad. We're just supposed to accept that, like, okay, that's dad, that's mom, and we should care about them.
Yeah, of
because
course.
Barry does.
Yeah, like of
Yeah.
course we love them.
But yeah, like the movie kind of struggles under that weight, I think, in a way that those other two movies I mentioned don't.
I mean, I want to be clear, Wes, he was cuddling with the monkey at the start of the movie too. I think that was just like a missed detail, because when I saw the dartboard in the thing, I was like, oh, that was the little childhood keepsake he had earlier in the movie. I remember that distinctly. Not to say that your larger point about the emotional investment piece isn't like valid, but you know, facts is facts.
I don't remember that scene.
I did
at
notice the monkey too on the dartboard.
I noticed the monkey on the dartboard.
Also take pride in not remembering
but did
stuff,
you
Wes.
understand its significance when that happened? Were you like, oh,
yes, because I saw him. There's scenes where he's sleeping and he's upset earlier, and he has the little monkey. He has the little toy monkey, our OG Barry. And I remember the camera even lingered on the dartboard in a way. Like, I just remember, oh, dang, this Barry must be taking it for granted because he's using the little childhood toys. It's a little dartboard thing. Like, I distinctly remember that thought the moment we first saw the thing on screen. So, like, some of that I think the movie did. Like, some people just miss, man. They throw a lot at you.
Yeah, I noticed it when it slowed down on the dartboard, as if we were supposed to notice it and it means something. But, like, it didn't mean anything to me. I was like, okay.
Yeah. He had the monkey beforehand.
And he's, like, petting it earlier in the movie.
Like, you see it before.
You can tell it's his security.
Yeah, there's
blanket.
moments where he's absolutely like, So that part, I thought and the reaction, I thought that was actually a part they sold well. But I don't disagree about the fleshed out relationship. Like the most important relationship is really Barry, and that with his past self is really the key core relationship of the movie, which I actually don't think is a bad thing. I think it means that the relationship for the people around him do suffer. But I think what made it work is that it makes you understand Barry's obsessive nature when it comes to wanting to help the people he cares about, because both versions of him suffer from this, even in different timelines and different upbringings, and it manifests in different ways, right? Like our OG Barry lost everything. Yeah, we don't understand deeply his mom, although the relationship with his dad thing, like those scenes were actually pretty good for me when his dad was in prison or whatever. But we know that Barry dedicated his career to wanting to try and fix the system because of an awful thing that happened. He is obsessive with trying to fix rights and make things right, and you know all that good stuff.
Younger Barry doing
Younger
that.
Barry, yeah, but I mean that's literally what turns him into the villain, which I thought actually was interesting because you can see how different versions of this person still can have some very similar traits with each other, even if they had completely different upbringing.
Obsessive.
In both cases, they went to extremes because they were obsessed with saving people or things they cared about. Now, our OG Barry learns that, hey, sometimes you got to let go, right? Which calls back to the mom's line at the start of the movie. Not every problem has a solution, which, you know, I thought was an actually solid beginning to end callback. But I think that's the biggest theme of the movie is how being obsessive and how it can hurt you and how sometimes you have to know how to let go. And our OG Barry learns what happens when you do have to let go a little bit. And our younger Barry, we see as like a cautionary tale of what happens when you can't.
That feels like,
and he ends up becoming this monster who loses everything. And you know, it's a lesson for our Barry of, hey, that's me. That could be me. You know, we're not that different. We're the same person. We have this power to try and do it. And you know, I'd be hard pressed to say anybody in younger Barry's shoes wouldn't somehow go down a similar path. It's hard to just tell somebody, hey, you have the power to fix things, but not this catastrophic world and anything that killed everyone you know. Like, I thought that was a good character motivation. And I thought it worked. I just think, to your original point, the relationship with the other people around it suffers because ultimately this is a movie about Barry, not about Barry's relationship with himself, not really about the people around. They help drive the story forward in terms of character motivations, but they're not the actual thing that leads to his character development. Like, Barry develops because of his interactions with himself, not because of his interactions with the people, like his friends and family around him, for the most part.
I thought that was inconsistent, though, right? Younger Barry he's presented as someone who, because he has two parents, lives in a much more like easygoing like mentality, right? He is able to make friends with actual friendships, right? He's not as obsessive about certain things, and he doesn't show this need to save everyone around him, right? That hasn't been something that formed his years. And so him being a hero for being a hero's sake, right, for doing the right thing all the time and to like put everybody else's needs above you is not something that's part of his character. And it's established because he's just kind of silly with it. Like when he first gets his powers, he just wants to do the Speedy Gonzalez thing. He wants to like walk through walls, and he doesn't listen to what, you know, Older Barry is saying as far as like anything. He doesn't let him finish sentences on like what to look out for, right? And he's not willing to like take that advice. And I think over the course of the movie, he does take more advice from the Older Barry, but it's not established that like in his character is this need to help other people and to put like save the world.
But
so I don't think that was consistent. I don't think that's something that links them together.
He definitely gets a turning point when he overhears OG Barry talking about his mom's death. And I think that's supposed to signal a turn in young Barry's story arc, right? And then he makes his own Flash costume, which I think was supposed to represent the fact that he now wants to step up to the mantle.
He's inspired.
Yeah, he wants to play his part, and that's what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's good.
You want to say that?
Did you buy it? Like, I didn't buy that.
No, yeah, I totally bought it because he's the character. Like just like all the Bruce Waynes are going to be Batmans, all the Barry Allens are going to be the Flash, and that's his character. Mm-hmm. So I definitely accepted it. And also,
don't
for sure.
Nah.
Yeah. Also, don't get too caught up in like the potential for heroism, because I think his thing is more so the potential for obsession, which I think is the big. I mean, yeah. No, my point more so is that he's a cautionary tale of what obsession can look like, and when he's pushed to the edge in a challenging situation, he falls down that same obsessive path that our original Barry falls down.
Losing
like, that's
his
more
girlfriend,
so
who's not his girlfriend.
You're so fixated on that.
World and everyone he knows and cares about.
So fixated on that. Both the Barrys.
Like he knows that Barry literally tells him Zod will kill this. His plan is to kill this world. So younger Barry recognizes pretty early on in this conflict with Zod. Oh, the stakes are like not just a couple people I care about. It is everything and everyone you know. And once he learns those stakes, he does step up to the plate. But again, those Barry, even older Barry says, "Oh, you talk a lot, you're fast, you interrupt." Oh my God, because he's like, "Oh, you're an actual reflection of me personality-wise." So they are very, even if they have these drastically different upbringings, they're still linked and have very similar traits that, again, under high intense circumstances for both of them, clearly, when they're pushed to the brink, they're willing to damage the timeline to try and fix problems. It's just younger Barry doesn't have that perspective that older one does. And so, I bought all of that. Like, there was issues with the movie. Like, my biggest issue with the movie, honestly, was just, and I say this as like it's just clear that they had to do a bunch of rewrites over time, and they clearly had to change stuff, which, with how long this movie was in production, I kind of figured that from the bounce. The biggest issue for me, honestly, is
that neither villain was actually dangerous.
No, because the villain is more so. I thought it worked because in all the Flashpoint stuff, the villain's ultimately Barry. The Flash doesn't have a villain that you punch and beat up to death. It's it's always going to be something more conceptual because of the nature of his power. I didn't have an issue with Zod wasn't really meant to be the villain. The villain was always meant to be the circumstance. Yeah. And like, I don't know. I kind of just tied a lot of the movie's conflict to what the mom said in the beginning of not everything has a solution. And so some of this is meant to be almost like a scripted fight you lose in a fighting game, a video game. Like, hey, the lesson is that you have to lose. And, I didn't have a huge issue with that. For me, the CGI at the end with those ridiculous cameo scenes completely took me out of the movie.
Yes.
That actually took the movie down like a peg for me. I was like, what the hell is this? What is this Nick Cage nonsense? And then they brought in Christopher Reeve, and then the different worlds look like these weird, awkward. I thought
disco balls.
It was a spider thing fighting a suit. That was the dumbest shit.
Actual Easter eggs.
That was so effing dumb. That actually took me out of the movie. I was like, y'all could have cut all of this out and it would have been fine. It didn't contribute to the movie. They weren't building off it with the ending. It's not like they opened up a multiverse. Somebody had too much creative control and no one to actually reel them in, and they just went ham. And I just want to know what the hell they were smoking, because it's not even like the CGI. If you're going to be self-indulgent, at least have good CGI, but don't be self-indulgent and have bad CGI and don't tie it meaningfully into the plot. That was disrespectful to me as a viewer in the theater. I was like, what the hell is this?
It's like,
I've seen PlayStation 3 games with better CGI quality. than that effing deep fake Nick Cage nonsense.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
I was deeply upset. That was the worst part of the movie. That was the worst part of the movie by a long
every
shot.
time we were in that like speed sphere or whatever they were calling it, and he was just surrounded by CGI dummies that looked like they came out of the PS2 era. Like, oh my, I just kept thinking about that game, Hard Rain. Do you guys remember this PlayStation game? Or Heavy Rain,
the old PlayStation game with the murder mystery.
Heavy Rain, just
I
like
remember that.
these goofy looking CGI dummies walking around trying to pretend like they're serious. I'm like, why is he in a zoetrope of dummies? Like it makes no sense. And then they double down on it, triple down on it with all the cameos at the end. Giant floating disco balls, Easter egg colors colliding into each other, and Nick Cage. They gave us the Nick Cage that we never really wanted, but we're so curious about. Like, wow, Nick Cage with flowing hair, Superman costume, and looked like terrible CGI. Like, where did the budget go? What were they thinking?
Into that.
Who approved this?
That was,
who approved this?
That was one of those, the rewrites, and clearly the reshoots and rewrites clearly had an impact on the movie. I was already reading after they clearly had multiple endings in mind. Like, again, we knew this with just how long this movie was in production hell, that was probably going to be the case. So, also, I'm enjoying this movie on a curve. Like, I already knew this movie was going to be flawed coming out just because of all the drama behind even getting it out. So, but yeah, that shit was so uncalled for. I normally don't feel disrespected in a theater, but I was sitting in the theater like,
how do they expect us to swallow this?
Y'all really out of pocket.
I'm gonna do my best Savon impression. To keep it a buck, y'all. We've been saying that though. Like, we saw Donald Glover in Across the Spider-Verse, and we really hyped that up. And now we're gonna be inconsistent in criticizing Nick Cage showing up here in this movie, when he's also, someone who really wanted to get a Superman movie off the, ground. It's just a little bit of like a nod and a wink.
It wasn't Nick Cage though.
The Spider-Man one wasn't distracting. The Spider-Man one wasn't distracting.
The Spider-Man one was part of the aesthetic.
And at least it was loose. And it was loose. Yeah, and it was loosely relevant to like what the plot of the movie was about. That Nick Cage didn't have nothing to, like, it had nothing, and it looked bad.
We lingered on Christopher Reeve and Nick Cage for a long time, and it wasn't them. It wasn't them.
Look,
they could have shot Nick Cage.
To me, the CGI stuff is like, yeah, the CGI stuff was bad, but it was just
you can't be bad at all of them.
Yeah, it was just like, but there was other CGI that was really good. So I don't know, maybe
the babies were really
I don't
bad.
know. The director kind of said
that made it more. That made it more upsetting because certain moments look great, and others I'm like, oh my god, y'all are like high peaks, low valleys. The director said that some of the CGI was amazing.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, they intentionally ran out of time and money or whatever. That's what you want to call it.
It's just they should have spent. The issues to me with the CGI was at that point I just was like whatever, like the CGI is bad, but this movie is like broken for me in ways that were like stronger or like more important in terms of the story and the characters and how it got put together, that I didn't care about the CGI. I was like, I'm not going to complain about the CGI here. It's fine. Like, I understand what they're showing me. So at least that makes sense.
To me, the CGI just underscores how much
3.
janky or how janky this movie is, right? It's just like, you can tell just across the board, cascading jank throughout.
That's what our title is going to be of this, cascading jank. All right, let's...
No, because it's not that bad. I still enjoy stuff about the movie. You're not about to put your Wesley stank on the title just because you hated it. I thought that was still this movie genuinely.
In talking to you
I was
guys,
entertained.
I've come to hate it more. I walked out of the movie being like, it's fine. I spent 2.5 hours. I didn't feel like I was like falling asleep or anything, but now I just hate it. All right. If you had to go hang out with your 18-year-old self, which for Savon is only 10 years ago or so, and for me and Brian, it's over 20 years ago.
12 years ago, Wes.
If you had...
I was 18, 12 years ago.
He just turned
10
30.
years.
He just turned
30. If you had to hang out with your 18-year-old self, how would that go? I think it'd be great. I would love to hang out with my 18-year-old self. I don't know what we would do. We'd probably go, to Dave & Buster's and hang out, maybe go on a bike ride or go to the beach. Actually, I don't think I was biking as much back then. And then we'd watch the Lakers. So I think it'd be an overall great day. Brian?
So basically,
A lot of assumptions.
you
Wes.
haven't changed, and you and your mirror self, you're
No, now I
basically
go
choosing. You're basically choosing the fuck option in the fight or fuck dichotomy here. Like, you two would love each other. Barry and Barry fought. Wes and Wes. We know what happened.
You don't think you'll
They
get
went
on
on
your
a
own
date.
nerves, Wes?
Would I get on my own nerves?
Wes goes on a date
18-year-old
with
self
himself.
would be more insistent. My 18-year-old self would be way more insistent on being right. That was my most annoying quality, I think, was I always wanted to be right. Now I'm just like, all right. I understand where you're coming from. I do a lot.
I'm gonna burst into flames.
Can we rewind the tape for 30 minutes? I think I think I have a serious
I love
gripe
you,
about my
bro.
18-year-old self. This might actually sound pretty parallel to Wes now that I think about it. I think my 18-year-old self, extreme, like very self-righteous, but I think my 39-year-old self would be very self-righteous about telling my 18-year-old self to shut the fuck up.
That you're being self-righteous.
Yeah.
You 39?
Yeah, man, 39.
We're about to turn 40,
Grown.
both of us.
I'm grown, my friend. I'm grown. But and I think my 18-year-old self was probably maybe like a little more like humorous, ready to roll with the jokes. Actually, my 18-year-old self had a radio show first semester
Whoa.
college. And so we'd jive over that. We'd be like, oh yeah, so what do you talk about on the radio? Cool, man. And I'd be like, oh, we talk about comic books. And he'd be like, yo, man, that's stupid.
What an intellectually empty pursuit.
Yeah, exactly. That's totally what my 18-year-old self would do. My 18-year-old self also was plotting how to transfer out of schools because he thought he was too good for the school he was at. So there's a lot of things there. But the thing is, he would also be kind of no fun because he was strapped in a long distance relationship at a very young age, which in hindsight, I don't recommend. My 39-year-old self is like, hey, man, go live your life. You're missing out. And I'd be trying to coax him to go to some parties. And he'd be like, no, I got to stay home and call the GF. And I'd be like, okay, buddy, you go do that. Do you? And then I would walk out and close the door and be like, shoot, that guy sucks.
What a nerd.
Savon.
Oh God. I mean, I definitely have to take 18-year-old me under my wing, teach him how to, I mean, there's always the natural, you're 18 and you're arrogant and think you know everything. So there's the natural just like ego check there of like, hey, shut your duck ass up. But then
it's a very New Orleans way to say that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a couple things. One, we would absolutely play fighting games, and oh my God, the sweat would be next level.
Were you already good at Super Smash at that point?
Oh yeah, that's when I was at the peak of my powers, probably.
Oh, they
honestly,
declined.
Older me might get smacked, and like younger me.
Whoa.
No, it's not that. It's just I'm still good, but I was just better then because I was playing more and playing against people, right? Now in Tekken, I don't know, it could go either way. The point is, the fighting game throwdowns would be incredibly fun. The not video game pursuits part, we'd have to do some realigning because I've chilled out and mellowed out a lot more since I was 18. Now I sit in parks and chill outside and roller skate and sometimes rock climb, and that's just nothing that 18-year-old me
was.
18-year-old
you outside, but outside? Is that you?
Yeah, I was outside, not outside. You know what I'm saying? I was just running the streets in New Orleans, Mardi Gras, just being a gremlin. That version of me now, like, yeah, I would be telling younger self, hey, bro, I'm not about to go out with you because I just don't want to lose an entire Sunday to a hangover. I want to get up at 7 and
go to the farmer's market.
With
go
the
to the
roller
farmer's
skates
market.
on.
I'll start cooking breakfast. Like, this man going to the older me. You want to go to the farmer's market? Man, what this dude think he doing? This man going to the farmer's market. I would.
Ain't that the whitest
interesting.
shit I ever heard? You just like criticizing your own
self.
self.
I'm just like, hey, bro, you gotta get. I mean, you ain't trying to get blueberry shit. So there would be some overlap where we would definitely vibe, and then outside of that, we're very different.
All right.
It'd be cool
All
though.
right. I don't really have a good take on this. So this movie does a little bit. It's kind of like the ending of all the things that were planned pre James Gunn. I mean, Blue Beetle is also pre James Gunn, but I'm sure he has a hand in like how these two movies are being released, or some of those reshoots and rewrites we're talking about. But in some ways, right, this resets the universe for DC movies moving forward. They can now mix and match different parts of the universe together, how they want to. Like, they can have George Clooney as Batman if they want. They can just bring in a totally new Batman if they want, but they could keep Ezra Miller as the Flash, or they could not keep Ezra Miller as the Flash. They could do all sorts of things to kind of change people up here. But where do you think, does this like point us towards a direction that you think DC is going under James Gunn? Or is this just like, hey, blank slate, we'll get to see, what's coming? Did you see anything in the tea leaves here that tells us where we're going? Savon?
I mean, no, I don't know. No, but I think they put themselves in a good position creatively to where they can do whatever they want. And that's really what's most important, right? Like, again, it feels like a silly rule, but them establishing in the beginning of the movie that, like, even with the Back to the Future bit, right, that changes can be unforeseen and pretty much random for all intents and purposes, gives them a lot of creative room to do whatever the hell they want. Because no matter what, people can say, oh, why did so-and-so happen? I'm like, well, Barry moved that soup can, so anything's on the table. And it's silly, but they establish how, I mean, look, all time travel multiverse stuff is at its core dumb. Let's just keep it a buck. Like, you're making it up. It depends on how you accept the head canon. Their explanation made enough sense for me to be like, okay, I get what you're going for. It'll set them up for success in that the things that work, they can keep. The things that don't, they don't have to keep. Like, now that we know that Ben Affleck is out for good on Batman, they retcon that, put into George Clooney. That means, okay, do we want to have Gal Gadot back as Wonder Woman? Well, if she's, with all the cameos she's been in, they probably will. They can do that without having to shake things up, right? We saw that Aquaman in the post credit scene where they're drunk walking down the street, having all the stuff happen. That was Jason Momoa Aquaman, so chances are he's still going to be in the upcoming stuff because he existed in this new, slightly changed timeline. But I think it gives them a lot of creative room that will let Gunn do whatever he sees fit, and I have trust in his vision. But the good thing is that you can really wash your hands of what didn't work and keep what did. So, because they really did do some legitimately good casting for a lot of the characters. Like, the entire Peacemaker show was still really good, and I would still love to keep those types of characters around. Like Jason Momoa's Aquaman is still really good. Like, just because the movies had their flaws doesn't mean that you want to just reset on all the characters casting wise. Now, hopefully they recast the Flash. They're gonna recast Batman and Superman and all that. But I think they're gonna be in a good position moving forward.
We'll see.
At the very least, a more cohesive direction moving forward is what I'll say. The quality of the movies is to be seen, but there's going to be more cohesiveness than what was before, which was their biggest issue historically, right?
I mean, if James Gunn is heading this stuff, I'm hoping that he's very good at making movies that at least seem like they're coming from one place and one voice, and they have like one way of making a movie, right? Like, he's clear that like he knows what he wants the movie to be, and for better or worse, that's what the movie is. So I hope that he's going to be empowering directors and writers who also have that same sense of like, I'm very clear about what I want this movie to be, and then lets them execute that. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't become, they have a vision of what it was, and then James Gunn tries to step in and make it the vision that he sees it as, because if you're not on the same page there, then you run into the same exact problems. Brian, do you think this tells us what's coming, or what is your reaction to us being reset here?
I do think it's a very convenient reset button for them, because they got the plate of spaghetti to play with, and they know, as we all know, that DC has just been throwing spaghetti at the wall for a long time and trying to see what sticks.
You see what he did there?
I just came up with that.
That was good. That was legit.
Give me my props. So, like, this is a very convenient way for them to just like leave the spaghetti on the wall that they liked. The other ones that fell to the floor, it doesn't matter, because
all right, now you got too far.
Now they got a reset button. But the thing, so I think it has yet to be seen where they're gonna take things, right? Because I think they're still trying to measure where they want to go, right? They're gonna look at the Flash and how did it play? Did it make enough money? Did people like it enough? that will also dictate what happens next step. I don't think they really have next steps fully figured out, right? The thing
They've
more
announced some of the
so-
movies. There's gonna and some of the directors, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think like how exactly they're going to handle everything, I think there's room for pause for them, right? And this gives them the ability to do that. The thing that I worry more about is that they try to make the DCEU feel different from the MCU. And I do think that this particular Flash movie maybe feels very much like an MCU movie, right? Like in its comedy, its self-awareness.
It was lighthearted. It didn't take itself super
it's not super
seriously.
Oh yeah, weird
serious.
to see Michael Keaton's Batman in the sunlight. He was never in the sunlight in the first two movies.
Yeah, smiling.
Dude, he played that so well. He was such a weird blend of serious and campy all at once. That
Let's
like
get nuts.
because remember we talked. Yeah, remember we talked beforehand about like, okay, we'll see. I wasn't sold on Batman. Saying, oh, I think he's gonna be cheesy. Blah 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 blah. He was so campy and serious at the same
That's
time.
Michael Keaton.
Straight up, I might rewatch the Michael Keaton Batman movie for like the first time because I am so blown away by how good he was. Like that's where I'm at with this. So I meant to get to step in y'all childhood shoes. But.
All right. How are we rating this movie? What is your rating? You can do it out of 5. You can do it out of 10. You could do the letter grading scale because every time I try and say out of 5, Savon never does it. So
out of 5 is for the devil.
I'm gonna go ahead and just concede this one that I'm not gonna win. I'm going. Well, I was gonna go.
No, keep doing it. Keep doing it out of 5. You got to let me just
I
be
was
resistant.
gonna go 6 out of 10 lightning bolts. But after talking with you guys and feeling my hatred flow through me like Anakin and the dark side, I'm gonna.
The line he even said,
yeah.
With the lightning.
He said that was pretty funny. He said I'm gonna empire him or emperor him.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
When he's throwing the final bat, when he's throwing up the electricity,
he said I'm gonna emperor him.
I was in tears.
It's dropping to a 5.5. There was certainly great stuff. We talked about it. There was good stuff. I don't know. It was great. It was good stuff. But like, there wasn't necessarily a reason why it had to be that particular Michael Keaton. This was something I saw on social media. I think it was a guy named Dave Chen or something. He pointed that out. I was like, yeah, it really didn't need to be that particular Batman. It was just like, well, people like Michael Keaton, so let's put him in there. 6 out of 10, maybe down to 5.5. Lightning flash bolts. Sav.
So
it's a failing grade.
I want to be clear.
If you're asking, it's a failing grade.
So I'm grading this on a scale, on a curve a little bit, recognizing that this movie took forever to even come out. They almost pulled the plug on this shit.
Why do you give them extra points for that?
Because context matters in how I judge a movie.
The end result is what matters.
Oh no, I'm as much about the I recognize the process of them putting I would prefer to get this than them have just pulled the plug on the movie altogether. So I still want to keep that in mind in how I judge it because I know they had issues, right? Including the star trying to pretty much
tank the whole thing,
the movie with their own behavior, right? So like all that factors into me. Like I take production.
They didn't let him do any PR for the movie. None.
Yeah, and hopefully they're done with them as Flash, even though they were good as the character acting as Flash. Hopefully, professionally, they're done with this person for good. But all that being said, like the CGI at the end was just that actually took like a solid half a point or so off for me.
It was distracting.
I knew this movie was going to have a bunch of like some things that were going to be a mess just because it's taking so long. So I just factored that in. This movie gets a solid 7.5 out of 10 for me. It was entertaining, which is ultimately what I want. They had lots of fun fights, fun action sequences. As ridiculous as that baby saving sequence was, I feel compelled to watch
it's memorable.
It again. And I don't know why.
For parenting skills.
Batman, Batman was awesome. Yeah. As a not Batman fan, I loved Michael Keaton. Supergirl, despite, her role in the movie being ultimately to kind of be a lesson in things having to die, she was still fun to watch on screen doing her stuff. Ultimately, I was entertained. There was never a point where I was watching this movie and I said, oh my God, I'm bored. Those moments where I say, oh, this is a little convoluted, or oh, this is a little unnecessary, like the ending piece. But like, I was entertained. I spent $11. That's like, I'd watch this movie again. I'm not going to be doing flips to watch it again. But I'd sit and watch it casually some other time, maybe like months and months from now.
I'm never watching this movie again.
To me, That's pretty straightforward.
Wow,
7.5 out of 10.
I think
Listeners, don't
I'm-
watch it. It's not good.
Whoa, listeners!
I would tell Kendall to
have
watch
agency
it.
for
At the
yourself.
very least, it'll be
No.
entertaining.
No.
I mean, I already talked to
Kendall,
Kendall.
don't. Kendall,
him, like, it's not
don't go
perfect,
see
but
this movie.
watch
Wait
it.
till it comes out on HBO Max.
I think this movie was surprisingly entertaining, and it had a lot of flaws. The CGI matters too because that was a climax. So having the climax being undercut by bad CGI is bad. But given all of that,
Yeah, I talked about
when I
endings
think
matter.
about
Fair.
all the recent movies that I've had time with and digested and to think about and whether or not I was entertained, I gotta say I was entertained pretty highly for this one. But I'm gonna go with 68 out of 100 batarangs on this one. Like it
Why are there batarangs? This is called The Flash.
because it was a Batman movie.
'Cause that was
It was
one
a
of the high
Batman movie.
points.
So I'm going with 68. And controversial, I think I would rather rewatch The Flash over the last Ant-Man movie. Ooh. Like I just think it was like more on the whole entertaining. I had like a good time watching this, and I'd be down to relive some of those moments.
Dang, you might be
No,
right.
I'm going Ant-Man.
You might be.
To me,
right. This movie is flawed, but there weren't any bad actors. In
I
this
would only
movie.
want to watch Ant-Man again to watch Kang. And he might also be
Kang was
canceled.
awesome.
Kang the
Well,
canceled?
you know, I love Michael Douglas in that movie, but
Might be canceled. We'll see.
TBD,
Yeah.
we'll see. TBD, we'll
Everybody's
see.
fucking up.
We say this while we talk about the Flash, so like
It's all
You
it's all
know,
coming apart at the seams.
the bar is in hell.
All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit us up on Instagram at confidently_pod. Let us know what you thought of the movie, where you thought the high points were, where you thought the low points were, and why Brian and Savon are out of their minds on the watchability of this movie.
Boo, Wes.
Let us know. I got my hater pants on and I'm drinking my haterade today. That's all I'm saying. All right.
Does the
Yo, you're
haterade
drinking
come
out
out of
of
the
a
pants?
420 cup, and you don't even smoke. You don't even smoke.
Bye.